Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is a different one, but I'm a bit worried that magicians will listen to this and think, oh, it's a juggler, it's not going to be relevant. This has been one of my favourite ones, along with many. I know I say that a lot. I love them all. But Jay Gilligan is one of the best jugglers in the world and known to be, and one of the most creative. So for me, it was a real inspiration to catch back up with him after so many years. I won't go into it loads now because we go into it in the podcast, but just to say that it's a really, really important podcast for me, and to reconnect with people from the juggling world, people from the circus world, to look outside of magic. And I know so many people say look outside of magic, and I'm starting to realise how important that is, and wishing I'd realised that so many years ago. So without saying too much, please listen to this. Please connect with a lot of Jay's stuff. You know, the links will be here, but just give him a Google search and you'll find some incredibly inspiring talks, creative work, experimental work, and I hope it has the same effect on you that it had on me. So it's been a while. I've been away gigging in Portugal, which was really interesting. I think I'll do a separate podcast on that because there was some interesting stuff that happened there that made me kind of adapt and be creative. And I think a lot of that kind of mindset has come from these podcasts, and this one especially. So thanks to Stuart Davis for editing. Thank you for listening. Please, if you want to support the podcast, do share it, do write a review. I get so much good feedback, but the numbers just aren't going to get there without your help. I know it's a big ask because it's a hassle, but it takes a few seconds. And it really, if you leave a 5-star review wherever you get them, it just makes a massive difference. So make sure you subscribe to it. You can check out onlinemagic.co, which is my membership site. You'll see how good that is by reading the Trustpilot reviews and seeing what other people have to say about it. And none of them have been written by me. I haven't sort of hassled people to write them. It's just something that's happened naturally after kind of guiding people to where they can do that. And I'd appreciate that very much. Please follow me on Instagram at Steve Faulkner. Follow Jay Gilligan. The links will be below. I'm recording this very late at night after returning from Portugal, so my brain is a bit mushy at the moment. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. And let me know what you think. It'd be really, really good to let me know what you think by writing a review or commenting wherever you get them, and emailing me, steve@onlinemagic.co or steve@stevefaulkner.com. So check out onlinemagic.co. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see some one-off courses. If you'd rather not do the membership thing, they've just been added. But you do get all those courses, well, not all of them, most of them, by joining up, other than the masterclass ones. So have a look at that. Thanks very much. I think that's about it. Real Magic Review. Check out the review site as well, the channel. Right, my brain is mush. I'm going to stop making sense even more in a minute, or even less sense. Yeah. Have a good one, and oh gosh, I can't speak. Here's Jay Gilligan.
Well, I put the money in the envelope that says it's got nothing in it. That seems a little bit too obvious, but maybe it's a double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. When I put the money in the envelope that says it's got nothing in it, that seems a little bit too obvious, but maybe it's a double bluff.
Jay Gilligan, there you are.
Hey, Steve.
I'm so excited, and I will top and tail this, but I met you sort of briefly, weirdly enough. You about 96, I reckon, 97. That's 30 years.
That's about right, yeah. That could be it, yeah,
years.
30 years. Yeah.
I was at the circus space doing 2 years circus school. I was on the course with Luke Wilson, Ilka, other jugglers, and you were doing stuff with Blink.
Yeah. Man, your memory is probably better than mine. It's so long ago, but yeah, that's true. And I didn't realize. I mean, I remember meeting you back then, but I didn't remember necessarily, or I didn't know probably that you were taking the course there at Circus Space at the time.
Sure.
But
yeah, no, it was a brief.
Great.
it was kind of a brief thing because you'd been on stage and Blink was kind of, I was like, because I was kind of new. I'd come from a small town to London, great jugglers, near there in the near city, some of which you'll know, and so it's kind of new to me. I'd been geeking out on juggling, and then was opened up to this world of theatre and different forms of juggling. And Sean Gandini was starting to do his thing. He was going from the young Anthony Gatto, the British Anthony Gatto, to something else, which was, which I talk about on podcasts all the time. Actually, it inspired me greatly. And then you came along with Blink and did other stuff that I'd never seen. And then you came on stage and at a cabaret, and I was thinking, it's Jay Gilligan from Blink, thinking you were going to do this kind of avant-garde stuff. And you had these silver trousers on, and you were throwing stuff around, and you had this rock and roll kind of fuck it attitude, which I just... And part of me was
sounds
going,
about right.
Yeah, and part of me was going, this is kind of weirdly arrogant, but I'm completely transfixed by it. And I was kind of thinking, like, I loved it. And then we met, and again, quite briefly, just started hanging out, and that was it. I never kind of saw you again, really. And what are your memories of those? Go on, say.
No, exactly. You were going to say, what are my memories? I mean, that's what I was going to say. Is it's so funny you bring that up, because just recently, I was at a circus festival this past week in Finland, and talking to some people there, where it's like, when you're young, because now I'm not young anymore, but I was back then, right? And so when you're young, you do these kind of performing adjacent experiments where it's like, I'm a juggler, but I'm going to wear silver pants and play loud rock music and throw stuff around and break my clubs and whatever. And then it's like, you think you're doing juggling kind of an extreme, some sort of edge fringe case of like, this is how to perform juggling in a weird way. But actually all you're doing is like a shallow version of another art form, like performance art, for example. Like when you're young, you're like, I'll do some weird stuff on stage. But then you start studying like performance art. That's like, performance art's no joke, like back in the 60s, like driving a car into a crowd of people in Spain. And I mean, for the past 100 years, like the history of performance art is really messed up and extreme. And so like chewing gum on stage, which is something else I think I did back then.
Rock and roll,
which
mate.
Seems like transgressive for like what I was taught when I was growing up, right? Like, you can't chew gum on stage and you have to blah, blah, blah. And then you're a teenager and you're a punk and you think you're doing something rebellious. And then it's like when you get older, right, you start to learn and go, okay, nailing myself, like crucifying myself on a Volkswagen with real nails. Like that's a performance art piece for real. So you're
so I just, when you said that, when chewing gum on stage, that's kind of the juggling sort of equivalent of Kneecap doing lines of coke on stage. It's kind of that's as extreme as it gets.
100%. And like I say, at the time, you feel like you're brushing up against something, really important or monumental, expressive. But at the end of the day, you're kind of just doing a shallow version of something else. I think of that a lot when I was like, let's fast forward from that time, like 96, 97, but just go like a couple years, not too much further into the future. But I remember I was hanging out with one of my friends in America, and we were trying to juggle 7 balls. I remember he got like a run of like over 100 catches. And we were both just like, wow, you can do it like for over 100 catches. That's crazy. And then he said, yeah, I have a show next weekend. I got to go practice my 5-ball tricks. And in the moment, that comment was very straightforward. Like, oh yeah, you got a show next weekend? Go practice your 5-ball tricks. Then I went to see his show the next weekend, and it was like 90% talking with jokes. And I think he did like 1 5-ball trick. And the problem was like the jokes weren't good. So then I was thinking backwards, and I'm like, reflecting on that comment of like, I got a show next week, I better practice my 5-ball tricks. And I was just thinking like, dude, you should have rather practiced, sat down and written some jokes and like taken a writing course and studied some dramaturgy, maybe an acting lesson, so like,
Yeah.
just this idea that we think we're doing one thing, we're maybe actually doing something else, at the end of the day. I don't know.
I totally agree. And I think that, I always think of because now getting back into juggling in a big way, I always think of the parallels, which are very clear, and the differences between the juggling circus world and magic. And that is one of them that you've hit there, which is that thing of, I've got the trick or the tricks, I can just say some stuff, and I think I wonder if part of it is the fact that we are not we as in every single person, but slightly maybe neurodivergent in that way that we get so transfixed with personally I can sit there with a deck of cards, juggling balls, whatever, for hour upon hour. What is difficult for me is sitting with a pen and a bit of paper for hour upon hour without going nuts, right? It's kind of boring. I get moments of flow, like when you start thinking of stuff, but the process to get there is excruciating for me.
I'm 100% with you. 100% with you, man. Like writing, we all know that we need to write at certain points, right? And the writing is really important, but man, it hurts. It's so painful. It's so boring. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a natural, I'm not into writing. There's maybe something about the physicality of the technique of working with cards and juggling where it just engages a different part of your personality, your brain or whatever. And then you can just spend 100 hours just banging your head against the wall on that 5-ball trick. But then if you give me 5 minutes to sit down with a paper and a pen, I just want to die. I don't know. And I'm sure we can find examples of people in the opposite direction. But I think it comes into, actually, I was in, like I said, this circus festival in Finland last week, Circus Ruska Festival. And they invited me to give a lecture about my career, which was kind of funny. I've never been invited to do that before. But I realized one thing when thinking back about my life, which was I fell into juggling, unicycling, magic. I did magic tricks when I was young. I fell into all that just as like a hobby, as we all do. Right? Very rarely, unless you're in a traditional circus family, you're not setting off to do this as a career. But this idea that I never was really into performing at the beginning, the performing was secondary. It was just something to do. It was like a practice or a hobby. And it was just a coincidence that juggling, for example, had been something that people performed in the past. Like it's a visual thing, but I never picked juggling because it was a performance thing. It was just like a physical practice for me to do. And I didn't think about it at the time. I'm a kid, 8 years old, but like looking back on it, it's like I got into performing through another medium, through another channel. Whereas I think there are some people who get into performing just to be performing, not just, but like that's their main focus.
Yeah.
And then they are maybe more into the writing and the structure and the character and all that stuff from the beginning. And that's their jam. They're just, they're into the performing for performing's sake. And for me, it was more just like, well, I juggle. So I guess sometimes people watch juggling. So maybe I'll show it to some people sometimes. Like it was such a accidental entry into this bigger world where sometimes you have to write.
Yeah.
And then it was weird to do the writing.
I mean, I still find it, I think there's two things for me. One of them is, yes, juggling is definitely, I would have thought for a majority of jugglers, because of the work that is required, and work, I mean play, basically, but the hours, you can't really go, right, oh, that juggling looks good. I'm going to go and do a close-up gig and learn 3 juggling tricks. But you can do that with magic. And I think that the juggling, you need to love it. Like any sport, you need to love that sport to get good at it. Then it can become okay, we need to structure the practice because there's a required goal or whatever. But with writing, I think stand-up's a bit different because I think a lot of stand-ups just fall in love with that idea of joke writing. It's an addictive thing because there's a process, right? There's a structure, and it becomes like a competition. Let's see, you can, and all that. But with juggling, I know a lot of people that I would say probably don't know that much magic, but are incredibly successful magicians because they just had that head of going, right, that looks like, I'm not criticizing this at all. It's like, well, I can do like 2 gigs a week and that's it, or 1 gig a month, depending on what the gig is. And there is part of that with me as well, which is probably why I'm not doing that much, because I want to do it, but I don't feel it, But and the writing, just as we're talking, I haven't really thought of this before. To me, the distance when I'm doing juggling or when I'm doing a magic trick, the distance from that moment to nailing the trick at home to taking it on stage, when you're used to the stage, isn't that great? You're doing the same thing. With writing, you're transforming scribbles into something completely different, which to me is daunting, and I lose faith in that. It's like, well, these scribbles of paper, surely they're not going to become. And I always remember Woody Allen, not for certain reasons, but the in the 3-hour documentary that I think Scorsese directed, he's writing one of his movies, and this always sticks with me when I'm losing that faith. And he's writing it. He always wrote with pen and paper on A4 paper, and it's just this mess of paper. You can hardly read it, and you think that's going to become a movie. That's going to become a Woody Allen movie. And that to me is when I go, right, it's all right. But I would say, don't write enough, don't do enough, and rely on kind of falling back on the kind of potentially hacky stuff. Like I know that if I do that, it's going to nail it at the end. So I'm.
But I love it. But I think I think you bring up a really important point there. That's a real truth, which is this idea that, if I do the juggling trick at home, or the technique or whatever is the physical skill, when I do that skill in front of the audience, it doesn't really change the interpretation or the meaning. I mean, you catch the ball, you throw the ball and you catch it at home. I throw the ball and catch it on stage. It's 1-to-1 mapping of that experience. Whereas those words you write at home, you're imagining some sort of communication happening with the audience. And then there's the real truth of that in the moment on stage. And so maybe now we're going to jump even more into the thick of it straight away here, which is like the juggling. I mean, so I've been struggling with this. And like I said, now we're maybe jumping right into the thick of it. But
no, it's good. It's good.
So it's like, the juggling is abstract. I mean, it's concrete what I'm doing. I have a ball. It's not a fantasy. I have a ball. I throw it. I catch it. It's all legible. It's relatable. We know how physics works in this world when we go see somebody throw a ball. It's not a mystery. But what does it mean? Or what should I get out of it beyond, for example, the juggler caught all the tricks so they're good, or they dropped so they're bad, in terms of some sort of judgment of execution of that first level of reality. I think that's what, beyond that, we're in an abstract world. So, but with language is concrete. We rarely go on stage and just do like a word salad on purpose. In the same way that, like, when I present juggling, I'm talking about maybe more a linear narrative here, which magic has different to juggling. Now I'm just throwing a million ideas out here, but like,
that's good.
With the juggling tricks, I do under the leg, behind the back, pirouette, neck catch. Okay, there's a succinct series of events there that people can comprehend in the moment. But what does it add up to? Well, some sort of bigger effect, even in terms of skill. Maybe they're impressed, or maybe they're, I don't know, moved in some way. But with words, we rarely just put a random string of words together, right? And just go on stage and just be like, bubble, giraffe, the color red. And the audience is just like, oh, okay, yeah, those are words. We can comprehend them discreetly. But when you put them together, I don't know what you're trying to say. And so I think there's something in there where these words you're writing on a page, they're not abstract. You have to have a more clear intention.
Yeah.
Whereas with the juggling, traditionally with a juggling act, your intention is, you can't articulate it almost. It's just like, well, I'm going to do this trick and this trick and this trick. Well, why would you do that? Well, it feels good, or this is how I've always done it, or I like how this one feels going into that one. But like, we can't really say what the effect of that's going to be on the audience. And whereas in magic, like the writing, magic is way more linear in terms of its narrative of like, here's a coin, now it's gone, now it comes back. But there's maybe some more comprehension of what that's going to do to the audience emotionally than the juggling. Because you have to do that in magic, right? To like make the magic happen in the spectator's eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn because I don't do magic really, but
No, this is brilliant because I think that's the good thing about this. And you're absolutely right. And it's so interesting to talk to someone who isn't a magician, because that's usually the big problem, right? Is that, yes, if you're doing a close-up gig and going up to a table of drunk people, you do the thing and a coin goes, and that is sometimes enough. You don't have to capture them emotionally because that happens. They go, whoa, or whatever. In a magic show or like in the show that I'm working on at the moment, or a lot of magicians work on, it has to be kind of more than that, because that can be found quite easily. That feeling of how did he do that, or how did she do that? They can see that on Netflix, they can see it on YouTube, they can see it at a lot of corporate events. To go and see a show where you're trying to, which I think most magicians do, when they start putting together their own shows, that's when that stuff comes in. Because unless you are the 0.1% of people that are so good, the magic is so beautiful that can take it for an hour, it's usually the case, as with juggling, that I think we have to work a little less hard because we've got that inbuilt thing, that they can still sound blown away even if it's presented badly.
Right.
But you have to do that bit of it. And that bit of it is the thing that, going back to what we were saying, we don't practice enough. And still, I and a lot of people I know, I go on stage with that thing that I've written and go, man, I've written that in someone else's voice. That isn't, because I haven't rehearsed enough, because I don't like rehearsal because it's boring. So I've practiced the tricks. And the juggling thing that you mentioned, which capture you've got that, the thing you said, you drop the juggling balls, you're bad, you catch them, you're good. Which is the when you drop, people go, as if it's the end of the world. When you less than me, but I rarely will do a routine, a full, and not drop, because it's kind of built in. I did street shows for ages, so there's gags with the drop, right? And actually to try and not drop is a weirdly uncomfortable thing for me. I just kind of got to a point where I just didn't worry about it and therefore dropped less. But when I see you, and this goes to back in the day, and also watching your TEDx talk that I watched recently and watching some stuff last night, where I'm trying to go at the moment is to try and break down that expectation of what people have in the room, which can be really difficult because we know that if we follow certain criteria and rules, we're going to be a step up. But if we twist their expectations. So at the end of that TED talk, you do all the great stuff with the props that you've been playing with and inventing and innovating and the ways of juggling and the evolution of it. But that juggling routine at the end is just ridiculous levels of skill, but also as you did back in 96, 97, there's a kind of fuck it attitude when you're running around the audience, grabbing a shoe off someone and juggling it. You juggle it amazingly, but I got the feeling that if you'd have juggled it and dropped, you wouldn't have given a shit. You'd have picked it up and you'd take a few attempts to balance the thing, the X on you. And that is breaking that expectation a little bit, because very quickly when watching that as an audience member, you relax because you're enjoying yourself so much. And Wes Peden, I thought, with his roller coaster show, again, ridiculous skill level. He'd do something that's mind-blowingly difficult. If he dropped, there was just this fun. When he picked it up, it looked like he was having fun. It was like, and right. That I think is quite rare.
Well, I think okay. So a couple of things there. Like that's awesome that you brought up, like, again, that kind of punk rock attitude from 30 years ago, and then at the end of the TED Talk, that's also a decade or more ago now. And so I want to wrap those things into this thought with an epiphany I had last year. So it's all kind of circular, or like all related. The first thing is we just have to define to the audience. We just have to. It's like the impossible task. Define to the audience what does it mean to succeed and what does it mean to fail. I said on tour a couple of years ago, I was touring America with the show in theaters, and I said, wouldn't it be great that if instead of kind of judging the failures by how many times you drop, you would celebrate the successes by how many times I catch? Because, if you add that up over the course of 75 minutes, of course, you drop like 2 or 3 times, maybe on a good night, 75-minute show, got 3 drops. I'll take that. but like, how many more times did I catch that? Thousands of times, you know? And so the audience kind of chuckled at that line. Like I had that line somewhere in the middle of the show, and they were all kind of like, oh, that's kind of a funny idea. And I'm like, yeah, it's not a funny idea. What if we actually did that? Like, and so there's this idea that like, if I let the drops, it's this old thing, and you know this too in the street shows that you did and everywhere else performing throughout time. This isn't a new idea, but if you let the drops bother you, then it will bother the audience. And so it's more like at the end of that TED Talk, when the audience lets out the sigh of an unconscious sigh of relief, when they see me juggle something and drop it, and then I don't care, like I'm not concerned in that moment in the same way of like, oh, I made a mistake. You caught me in this embarrassing moment, and now you're embarrassed for me, and I'm embarrassed because I did it wrong. And so there is something about the attitude towards that. And now we're going to get into the epiphany I had last year, which is that I always try to, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to change the conversation between me and the audience. Like normally juggling is defined by how many times you catch. And if you drop, it's wrong and bad. I had a show with a drummer like 10, 15 years ago, and we really tried to do that. We really tried to flip the script. I really tried to be like, the success of juggling is what I catch. It's not the failure when I drop. So it was almost like having a DJ on like a live, like he was a drummer, but like the energy of like, you ever seen the extreme sports competitions like X Games or something back in the day?
Yeah.
They would have like a live DJ with an MC, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then like Tony Hawk would go up and be like, Tony Hawk's going to do the 900 fakie flip, whatever, you know, I'm not a skateboarder. So Tony Hawk tries it. He bails out, right? Falls on his head. And the MC's like, yo, let's hear it for Tony. Make some noise. He's going to try it again. Nobody who goes to X Games is like, man, Tony Hawk's a loser. He can't skate because he missed that 900. Yeah. But the DJ keeps the energy flowing with the music. The MC's hyping the crowd. And then, you know, after 20 attempts, he lands the 900 and the audience loses it. It's the same thing as like the Soviet era circus back in the day. They're passing 10 clubs across the circus ring, and then the guy goes to collect it, and then he drops the first time, right? It's the same thing as traditional circus, like that you're building tension, you're heightening the stakes, you know? And so we really tried to do that with this show where it was like, okay, what if it was like an extreme sports competition, and then people just celebrate the successes, and then I'm able to take more risks because the drops don't count in the same way. But the epiphany I had like last year, and that show kind of like, did it work? I think it just worked with my bravado, which was the same bravado I had 30 years ago in the silver pants, of just kind of like forcing, and like you say, it's a little bit arrogant, 100%, because you're kind of just forcing this attitude on the audience. And what I thought of last year, this epiphany was like, wait a second. We're in a society, we're in a culture, and the starting point for juggling is that it takes skill and there's risk involved because you might drop, and if you catch it, you succeed, and if you drop, you fail. And I was kind of always glossing over that, like out of sheer will of mind, of force, like at the circus space or with my drummer or at the TEDx thing. I'm just like, no, we're going to do it in a different way. But I think like what I realized a year ago was like, we have these cultural starting points of how we understand different things in the world. And if I just stop with someone on the street right now and I say, hey, juggling, what do you think of that? Or describe juggling to me. They're probably going to start with like, yeah, well, part of that is if you drop, you messed up. And so I'm not saying we can't change that conversation with the audience, but it took me so long to realize like that was the starting point for the conversation. So the audience is starting with that in their mind. And then I'm starting with another idea in my mind, and we have to meet in the middle somehow. And that was the nice epiphany I had like a year ago. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this much better now that I understand where they're coming from unconsciously. Because even as much as I want juggling to be in a certain way or circus to be in a certain way, it can be, but the starting point is that culturally we value juggling in this very specific way. Or the starting point for juggling is, you know, culturally like this in our Western world. It's the same, and it's the same thing though for all art forms. We value dance in a certain way, rock music in a certain way, opera, sports. Like we all have these different. Like for example, a good example would be the orchestra. Again, you stop someone in the street right now, and you say, "Describe an orchestra to me," and if they had some language to do it or some patience, they would say something like, "Yeah, it's very like." Emotional music or something. Like nobody's going to start with the orchestra description being like, well, if they play a wrong note, they failed. There is an aspect of virtuosity to to playing in an orchestra that we will get to as maybe a second level description, but it's kind of uncouth, right? It's uncultured to be like, the only reason I go see the ballet is because they jump high. It's like, yeah, well, you're not very clever. You're missing the point. Because ballet is culture and culture is emotion and blah blah blah. So, and that's just in our society, how we were raised. How we grew up and evolved as a society. So, juggling has a certain relationship to people. Ballet has a certain relationship to people, and those relationships can be changed. But it was that thought like from a year ago where I was like, oh, but we're starting from here and we're starting from there. So, okay, if I want to change that conversation, I'd better like get my act together and understand who I'm talking to. Anyway, that was a bunch of thoughts there.
It's so good because it's exactly the same, probably the wrong word, but. And I don't keep wanting to go, oh, that's like, I don't want the whole podcast to be like, oh, that's like magic. It's kind of when people go, oh yeah, me too.
I'm into it.
Yeah, I'm having a really hard time. Yeah, I am too. And kind of, but it's of course, the question I get more than any question is, what do you do if it goes wrong? Right? At gigs, it's like if I'm doing a walk around gig, it's like, what if you ever get a trick wrong? What happens? It's like, and I get it. It is funny watching tricks go. I love it. Especially if it's your friend. I always love that thing in Covent Garden where if someone was having a bad show, everybody goes, "Come on, have a look. He's dying on his ass." And it was even funny when it was me dying on my ass. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
Because you kind of enjoy it in that sick way because you go, guys, I can't do anything here. But we have that, obviously, that starting point. So in one way, I suppose we have more work to do to either flip that or create something more. But do we have less? Because not many people are playing with that expectation, right? So, and I've done it subconsciously through insecurity all my life. Whenever I do a juggling routine on stage, and I do it for a very good reason, I just go, I couldn't catch at school, so this is going to be fun. Because that's true, right? I can't catch. So, and actually, One of the talks I'm working on is called "The Juggler Who Couldn't Catch" and Other Stories. Because it's that thing is, if you get your head down and you say, "I may do this in a flawed way, but maybe it's going to improve the bigger picture, the whole thing. Maybe it's going to give it more meaning or more jeopardy or something." Because that's real. It's not just a kind of get out of jail thing. But it when you win the audience over, not in a manipulative way, but actually they go, this is a person, right? This isn't somebody going, look, I'm the best at this, and you're going to nail you to your seats, and you're going to, which is again the problem with magic a lot of the time. And I found with the local shows that I do, they kind of know me now, the audience, and I've screwed tricks up loads of times in front of them, and I can guarantee they don't walk out there going, oh, that was rubbish, you screwed that trick up. So I wonder if I'd like to do it in a slightly less explicit way, kind of every trick of the show going, this one might be shit. But I suppose what I'm trying to get to now, which I think a lot of people do through age or experience, is after watching you last night, I came up with a name of the new show, and it was Unstuck. Right? It's called Unstuck because I've been stuck in these things, and through fear and insecurity, I've not been brave enough to kind of almost do what Sean Gandini did. And I don't mean I'm going to start doing a dance with one ball with a troop of 7 people. But that thing of actually, this isn't what I want to do anymore. And there's going to be certain people in that room that go, what's this? It's not going to be, I'm not going to start doing the performance art thing of nailing myself to a car. But it frees us, and also gives us a more, there's values and things that come into that, but gives us an audience that maybe is different from what a lot of us end up doing is just lowest common denominator. And I don't mean low as in bad people, but, you know, especially on the street, you go, I've got to try and please everybody. Everybody's got to love this. I don't want one person. So whatever age they are, whatever their demographic is, what their political views, I want them all to love it. And we know that that's unrealistic. And I think the lack of joy, and you mentioned it in an interview, you know, people that have been jugglers for years end up not loving it. I think that's part of it. It's kind of going, right, there's got to be more. Maybe not more audience, maybe not more money, you know, but there's got to be more. So how do we do that in that way of not just telling them, you know, how do we build that system around our show, that agreement that may take them 5 minutes to go into this? And I think you did it in a way in that and I know it was over 10 years ago, but I said to Gracie, my daughter, mate, she's 20, and we were watching, I said, oh, this is, I haven't seen him for 30 years, and I'm watching him. And I noticed in the TEDx audience, by the end of that, everybody's like really behind you, right? They're just like, way. And you don't get that with lay people a lot of the time. They'll kind of, but they are, and that isn't just because of the juggling, right? So what is it? What got them there?
I mean, probably on the TEDx thing specifically, that's a great point to bring up. I didn't think of that. It is the Penn and Teller quote of like, imagine your audience is as at least as interested and as intelligent as you are in what you're doing, or like whatever the quote is, you know, they're like, think that the audience is smarter than you. Right. And that it's not a condescending tone or talking down or like a dumbing down or whatever. It's like more of a challenging thing. And that I think the TEDx thing was really, I mean, also just specifically on the TEDx thing as a fun little behind the scenes was like, you know, they're stuck in that room for like 10 hours that day listening to people talk.
Exactly. That's kind of my point.
And right. Yeah. And so then and they put all the performers in the front row. I literally sat there for 4 hours, writing my speech as I watched the other people. It was all in Finnish. I don't speak Finnish. I think I was one of the few people who did it in English. It was there in Helsinki. And so by the time I stood up, it was just kind of like, maybe part of it too was just kind of admitting the reality of the situation instead of having this glossy TED Talk flavor of like, this is a big deal or bigger than it is. It was like more just being in the moment and being real and kind of having some humor and like being just being human. Right. And like not this perfect version. I love what you said, that title of like the juggler who couldn't catch, because it goes emotionally straight to the heart of like, everybody can relate to that. Because it's what you said before. When I was talking about having that common starting point of a conversation, and you said, yeah, but maybe it's not so much of a challenge in the end, because not a lot of people are trying to do a redefinition or a re-relationship of what they're doing. So maybe you have that advantage of like, I don't know, some sort of like, you can use that utility of where people are at. And that's what you're doing in that title, right? It's like, you don't need to explain that title. We can leverage these things that already exist. So it's not a bad thing that everybody thinks that juggling is catching, because you can just go to a more emotional, like, you know what I mean? You cut to the heart of the matter faster. You just go, hey, I'm the juggler who can't catch. And then people immediately are like, can relate to that. And I think that's a really awesome thing to do. It's a powerful thing to, not just try to change the definition, but to work with what there is and to know what you, so then the challenge from there becomes, what do you want to get out of the experience just in general? I guess for the most part, as we all are not rich from performing, we generally want to get paid. So it does come down to that. Like, we want to connect to the most people the most times possible so that we get the most money in whatever context, that's be it a street show or a producer or whatever for a festival, or, you know, politically with our careers. So I wanted to bring another layer into all that, if I can, which is this idea of technique. And I'm a little bit stuck on this question. I've had it for years. I'm going to ask you the question and see what you think. And then hopefully it'll tell me once and for all what I think. But it's like, I always imagine a fictional scenario where you're going to go see, you can choose to see two performances, but they happen at the same time. So you can't see both. And on one hand, you can go see this person juggle 9 clubs on their own, which has never been done before, as far as we know. and they're going to juggle those 9 clubs for 100 catches, and they never miss. They've never missed for the past 50 years. So you can go see this person juggle 9 clubs, and you know it's 99.99% not going to mess up, right? Or you can go see this other person who's, let's say, 10 years old, and they've never flashed 4 balls before. They never just did 1 round of 4 balls before. But they're going to try it that night on stage. And I'm going to tell you beforehand, they're going to make it, but they never did it before. And so like emotionally, which performance do you want to see? Like, do you want to go see the perfect technician who does the superlative technique, but there's no real risk? Do you know what I mean? Like there's no tension. I don't mean risk physically, but just like theatrical tension of like, oh yeah, there's the guy going to go play Bach on the violin. Or would you rather go see the 10-year-old who's going to have this freaking moment of like, euphoria?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know which one I would choose. I would probably choose the kid. What would you want to see?
Oh, I wouldn't even have to think about it. The kid, without a doubt, and that's how the Britain's Got America's Got Talent. That's that stuff, right? When the person comes on with this kind of vulnerability of nervousness, and they have that moment of release where the audience just go, "Well," and we know it's manipulated in certain ways and all that. And maybe they're not quite as green as we're led to believe when we find out they've been working for 25 years, But it's I don't matter who you are, I'm quite cynical about those shows sometimes, but I still, if I'm walking past the TV and it's on, I could be crying in 5 minutes, even though I know that, so there's that.
Yeah, you're human. You're human, man. Like, you're human.
You're connecting as a person. So the juggling, what you're trying to do is someone overcome an issue, which is the story arc, right? Which is in everything. Whereas the other thing has its merits. And I had a question that was very similar to yours, but just in a straight question, in not as interesting way. But with juggling, magic, I would say 90% of magic I don't enjoy watching, never really have. That's not that it's bad, it's just a preference. There's 10% that has other layers to it. And even if it's, and I can watch someone do beautiful magic and not say much and still love it, or someone like Darren Brown who, watching straight mentalism doesn't do it for me. Probably because I know some of the methods and I kind of go, but it needs that extra layer. But it doesn't have to be really extreme extra layers of being hilarious or funny. It can be just likability or I'm enjoying watching this person. Whereas I've been learning a lot of my juggling and technique because I'm trying to get all that back and then some before I then start experimenting a bit more, which I have a question I hope I get to. I never get to my questions, which is always a good thing. So I was learning from not Andrew Garfield, he's the actor, Jason Garfield. All that stuff, right? Very clinical, and again, not in a detrimental way. It's very almost like, and the teaching is phenomenal. It's the only teaching that's really allowed me. When he says to me, "Do not go any further until you can," and I realised, trying to practice 5 clubs, that I couldn't throw one and catch it in my left hand without reaching, so I had to go right back to that, and that's been really helpful. But the watching of it is the same as watching diving, right? My daughter used to do diving when she was younger, and the clinical diving in the Olympics is impressive, but I'd much rather, and most of them are divers, but I'd much rather watch the Red Bull guys chucking themselves off the mountain, landing on their feet or whatever, but doing, with a DJ on. So I think that there's a place for that technique, but if it doesn't go any further, in the obvious ways of it gets boring, all that kind of stuff, but there's no human element to it, right? So I think for a lot of us, there has to be something, and it isn't the badly written comedy script, because which magicians and jugglers and everybody I'm no doubt doing.
Good afternoon, fellow conjurers, and welcome to Volume 1 of my lecture tapes. I'm going to kick off with a nice little effect I call the Kings of the Ancient. I think it will play well to a high school prom or like a work do. Can you be quiet now, please? I'm doing my program.
Just on the side, I remember I've got a contact juggling DVD because I did the same with contact juggling, 3 hours a night now for 2 years in front of the TV because I could not even hold the fucking things in my hand. And now I'm nearly getting 2 stacks of 4. and we're talking 30 years on and off. And I got this contact juggling double DVD and it had all the stuff. I thought, great, I can do that, like the Garfield thing. But this whole thing, you might know it, they're just trying to be funny through the whole thing. Every moment they're trying to be funny, and they're really not funny. And I can't, it's not that I can't watch it, I can't learn from it, and I'm gutted because the teaching's probably all right, but I cannot get past that, even to the skills. So it works the other way as well, probably, right? I wish they would not do that and just shut the fuck up and teach the thing, And don't get me wrong, they're probably lovely. It's a very old thing, and if they'll ever listen to this, which they might, because you're I believe people know you are in the juggling world. I'm not. It's of a moment, and I'm being extreme for the sake of entertainment. But the point being, you can go too far the other way, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, there's so many thoughts I had there. I wanted to try to get out and wrap into this because it's really fun to connect these things up. Yeah. I mean, one thing is just to be clear, just to clarify something that we talked about a few minutes ago. I think for the most part, I hate dropping. I just want to say that out loud. I hate it. I hate dropping, by the way. I don't like it. I don't think it's fun or cool. I want to catch all my tricks. But what I want to do is just say, you talked about Luke, you said the name Luke Wilson at the start of our conversation today. And Luke Wilson was really the one who said, a drop is a failure of intention. So that's why when I talk about at the end of the TEDx thing, it's clear that my intention isn't to catch everything. So in that way, then it's fun. It's fun to throw things around and, toss things aside and have water splashing around, because the intention wasn't when I juggled the cup of water to keep the water in the cup. And I think that's why it was fun for the audience to see that, because if I would have been doing the cup of water and then the water splashed out, everybody could have been like, "Ooh, he dropped the water." Sure. You're like, that's clearly not the intention. So I hate dropping, but to be clear, we're stuck with language, right? We're stuck with the English language where dropping means to fall down. Yeah. It's just a technical language problem. So Luke Wilson, dropping is a failure of intention. Okay, so then we can move on from there. And just to say, I hate, as does every other great performer, they hate a failure of intention. If you're intending for the audience to be amazed at this moment or have a moment of wonder because of X, Y, and Z methods, and that doesn't go correctly, you hate that. It's not fun. It's not cool. It means you're messing it up. Yeah. And so just to be clear, so we have that on one hand, this idea that I hate dropping. And then we can also say, again, tying back to what you're saying about that's so funny, the contact juggling DVD, because I know what one you're talking about. But but this idea of we want to see the person juggle 4 balls for the first time ever, as opposed to the person going to juggle 9 clubs. For me, this has really been a challenge with juggling to wrap my head around what is technique. How do we value technique? Because we can value it in a superlative way when we're talking about, I juggle 7 balls and then you juggle 8 balls. Okay, you're better than me. If we're talking the numbers, but at the same time, maybe I'm that you juggled 8 balls for the past 50 years and I juggled 7 balls since yesterday. How do we quantify that as technical? I know we can just do pure mathematics of who ran the fastest 100 meters. And we don't have to take into account well, you ran faster than me, but I'd eaten an ice cream cone beforehand. It was weighing me down. I don't know. We can't, we can do the scientific metrics of just who juggled the most objects or who ran the fastest without taking any other sort of quality into consideration. But to get to my point here, because it's pretty abstract, but to get to the point is, how do we quantify, if we want to, creative innovation in terms of that? It's the mental thing. It's the mental barrier of you could say the first person who juggled 5 clubs is maybe better than the person who juggled 9 clubs. Because back in the day, in the context of the 5 clubs, doing 5 clubs was way more unthinkable than 9 clubs is today, for example. So it's the 4-minute mile, right? Before somebody broke the 4-minute mile, nobody ran the 4-minute mile. Then the one person broke that barrier, and then everybody knew it was possible. So this idea of technique, it really sticks in my head now for many years, because I'm just like, well, how do we account for the mental struggle of the technique? Like, how do we account for the mental like the struggle of the innovation of knowing what's humanly possible? Even if we just want to do the accounting version of like, you juggled 10, I juggled 11, you juggled 12. Like this, I find that very boring. But like, there's some sort of mental labor that we don't really account for in the numbers, right? Like there's the context of learning the technique. And so to try to wrap this up into what you were saying, which made me think about all this stuff, is part of 30 years ago wearing silver pants and playing loud rock music is I just loved music. I just loved juggling so much that like I took that for granted, that like clearly everybody loves good juggling. And of course, like good, like the word good is subjective too. Like I was so, I'm just a teenager, right? I'm just like, well, if I juggle better, everybody's just going to love it because everybody loves good juggling. But like that whole thing is so subjective. And so what I learned over the years was, instead of trying to be funny, or I mean, hopefully sometimes I'm funny if I want to be, but like instead of trying to do this or that or the other, I try to share my passion for juggling. So like I fully accept now when I'm old that like not everyone loves juggling. But I have found, and maybe on that TEDx talk too, that my passion for juggling is something that people can like, even if they don't like juggling.
Yep.
And I think that's maybe a little bit what you were getting at there.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you see it? Do you see it all? What the hell I'm saying?
Yep. It's crystal clear. It feels like it's not crystal clear to you, but it really is to me.
Well, I've been struggling all these thoughts for the past like 5 years, like trying to get them out. And it's so fun to talk to you because juggling and magic and all of these different types of performing. And normally I'm stuck just talking to people who know one thing or the other. Sure. And it's so hard to wrap all these thoughts together. So it's like, thanks for listening.
Oh man, I'm so glad. And there will be magicians listening to this that totally get what you're talking about as well. With magic, of course, the skill is hidden, which can be deeply frustrating, because even if like a lot of my ego's gone compared to what it used to be, I don't get that same buzz from people going, yay, that was great. Obviously I do on stage, it's a different thing, but I think it's a hidden skill mostly. So that can be deeply frustrating and sometimes break through in inappropriate ways, in the way that you kind of want to give them something, but you give them too much of insight, maybe sometimes all that kind of thing. So how do you... I do want them to know, right? I don't want it to be the main theme. Maybe it is the main theme of the juggler who couldn't catch thing, but I want them to tie into the difficulty of it, not just in the way that they see a diver and go, oh, it's hard to flip your body around and land face first in the water. Probably not the most eloquent description of it. Sorry for any divers, there's a bit more to it. But so with the juggling thing, we've all been there, right? You take your kids to the circus. Took my kids to the circus a few years ago. There's a guy doing 5 clubs and a head bounce with a football, right? They know it's difficult. They have no idea how difficult. And there's no context, right? It's just another trick in the show. Yeah. So how do we do that? We can do it, I think, again, in a show that is your show, that you're sort of introduce things, and in your talk, and you do talk about that in the, not, I don't want people to think that I just watched a TEDx talk, because that's all, but the one you did in 2024, where you're talking about the fact that, back in the day before the internet, you were saying it was almost easier to be more creative because you couldn't just buy the props, right? You couldn't get the rings, the clubs, the balls, and what people do with them because we can watch it on YouTube. Back then, you didn't have that communication stream open, so you would think of the trick first and go, how can I create a thing, because I've got this idea in my head. And I think that happens with magic quite a lot. We have the cards and we go, right, for those people that want to create, how can we create that? But then even if we go through that creation process, which could take years, and it has done with certain tricks for me, when I present them, there's part of me that dies when they think, oh, I just bought a thing. I just bought a special box that, it's not that I learnt the sleight of hand to misdirect them and So we have a similar thing, right? Even though yours is more show, you're not hiding anything. What you are hiding is the work. And going back to watching you perform, and I'm not just saying this to praise, because I've been wondering why I can watch you do that stuff. And I know you don't get the impression watching it that you love dropping. It's not about that. It's about the kind of fun element of it. There's moments in that where you think, even if I wasn't in the room, I feel like you'd be doing a similar thing with that music on. Right, and I when I'm in the practice room in the gym, some music, it just changes me, and I just I get into that zone of just fucking, this is great. And it's that contagious thing, I think, that people feel when they go, we're watching someone that loves what they're doing. And I know I'm rambling, but it's I always remember, before I was a street performer, before I was a juggler. No, I was a juggler. I think I was actually on one of my first ever gigs with Donald Grant, John Blanchard. I had no right to be on this gig. Absolutely no right to be on this gig. But it was in Germany, and I was in the room, and there was something on TV, and it was a documentary, and I think it was subtitled, and it was somebody had followed street performer. It's a tourist thing, but they were saying you can feel the joy of the street performer is contagious. It said something like that, and I thought, I'm watching this guy. The guy wasn't doing good tricks. He wasn't doing anything like that, but it's that contagion of joy. Of course, it can go over into self-indulgence. There has to be a connection there somewhere, or maybe not. If we're doing certain, maybe certain performance art is just you're watching someone not quite understanding it, but maybe it's that goes the other way, and we love watching that as well. A David Lynch film that none of us knows what the fuck's going on, but we're loving it. So there's the bravery of that, which is, I suppose, a different subject. So I don't think there's an easy answer to it, is there? Other than we either double down, and this is one of my questions, when you're creating now, the stuff you're creating now seems so, in a very good way, personal, right? It seems like a personal thing. What you've done with the clubs, it doesn't feel like you've put a hole in those clubs. And for those people, I will put links below. If I forget, remind me of different videos of Jay. And I don't know the name of those clubs, I apologise. The one that you've created with a hole in, what are they called?
Holy Clubs.
Holy Clubs, there you go. Perfect.
So creative.
Get to the point, don't fuck about. But there are things you can do with them, right? But it doesn't feel like you've gone, right, what will the audience love? What will they love? It feels like you've gone, I've wanted to play with this thing and experiment and come up with something that is usable and connects with people and is different, but it feels like it's come from a personal space, as does with this is where I'm going to sound like a non-juggler, there's probably a name for it. This is going to sound like when non-jugglers say juggle them pins, right? The sticks. You've got them sticks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, those sticks,
Yeah, is that all right? Sticks, I thought I might wonder. And you're doing this stuff, and you're, again, it looks like a very personal thing, but I'm connecting with you, enjoying you in that world.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you have to look at the audience and go, hey, this is good, isn't it? I'm going to try and put another one in now. It doesn't feel like that's required or necessary. You've rewritten the thing there. It's something I've never seen, and I'm like, what's he going to do next with them? So I suppose that's
100%. Yeah.
Just double down,
No. So that's great. That's great you bring that up. So I want to tell you about a moment I had in my life that you're probably going to relate to. I was at a juggling convention, the European Juggling Convention. It was in Joensuu in Finland. I guess Finland is the theme of this podcast today. So we keep talking about Finland. I forget. I mean, that was a ton of years ago too. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or more. And, I love juggling, right? Like I love juggling. That's for sure. So I'm at this juggling convention, thousands of people there, a couple thousand jugglers, and they were doing the parade in the town square. And then they were going to do a show like on an outdoor stage for the town, like for not just for the jugglers, but for the local community. And so I'm standing in the back of the crowd, and there's a performer on stage doing some Diablo juggling. Sure. But at the time, a lot of new stuff was happening in Diablo, like slack string, like stuff coming over from yo-yo, like freehand yo-yo tricks and like slack strings tricks and stuff. So it was all very like physically it was all happening below their chin, above their waist, right? Like it's just in that very small geographical area of like the visual spectrum.
The card trick area.
Yeah. So, so I'm standing in this crowd, 2,000 people at this town square. I love juggling. I'm hyped to be there. Oh my goodness, we're doing the convention. It's so fun, And then there's this person doing a show and they're doing this Diablo stuff. And I can't really tell what's going on. And I love yo-yo and Diablo and slack string and all of it. And I don't care. I just don't care. Just like this person's doing something. I don't know what it is. And even I don't care to know what it is.
Yep.
Because they weren't, sharing it for potentially in a accessible way. It was all very internal. And I remember going home. It kind of shocked me. It kind of shocked me, man, because I was like so into juggling that I was like, whoa, this is weird that I don't care about this. Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, did I change? Like, I got, all like, who am I? There's like an existential crisis moment. Like, what's going on? Like, I should be loving this and I don't love this. And I had a moment of like reflection of like, okay, here's a bunch of ideas that I'm working on with juggling. And they're all conceptually internal. Like, if I explain to you the story of what I'm doing and then I show it to you, you're going to maybe think it's cool and be like, whoa, that's so like fun or emotional or whatever. And then I had a bunch of other ideas I was working on that were also conceptual, but they were visually like accessible or concrete or something.
Yeah.
And so we can say the clubs with the holes in them, the sticks. And I just had this fork in the road and I was like, oh, I should just like choose things that are visually, I don't say attractive, but like
engaging,
thank you. Yeah. You can experience them visually, even if you don't know where they came from, even if you don't know what I'm thinking about them. And so what you're saying is like, you can intuit that like when I take the clubs with holes in them, yeah, I definitely didn't sit down and be like, okay, all right, what's the audience gonna love? Oh man, I should cut some holes in my clubs.
Yeah, they've always wanted them. And then you've just had a feeling that's where they wanted you.
They really love Swiss cheese, like, man, Swiss cheese, like that'd be such a hot, trendy, I'm going to make so much money. No, but like I go, well, I have this curiosity about juggling and juggling culture. I have this curiosity about the history of making props. I have this curiosity about technique. I have this curiosity about my body and my, how it interfaces with objects. So like, I'm going to cut some holes in my clubs. But I also picked that project because I knew there would be a visual component to it. And it wouldn't be some sort of internal, hidden, Diablo thing at this convention, right? Like I kind of hedged my bets towards making it connect to the audience in some way, maybe not in every single way of where it came from, but like there was some concession towards the audience of like, hey, I like this thing. Maybe you'll like it too. Maybe we have different starting points, but we'll meet in the middle. And I love it that you say like with the sticks, you're like, what's he going to do with those things? I mean, yeah. Honestly, like the sticks was kind of an instigation from, I can't remember, it's years ago. And it was like, here's 3 sticks that are like, I always felt this with the sticks. Here's 3 sticks that are tied together. Do something with them. Like a little bit of an instigation, like,
yeah,
what the heck am I going to do with sticks tied together? And I kind of took it as a fun challenge. And I still think of it today when I get up and do the piece. I really love that piece. I'm really proud of it. And it's like, it's like around 5 minutes now, the new version. And it's 3 sticks tied together. And I think sometimes I think in my mind, like it's a very internal dialogue, like, okay, people, I got 3 sticks that are tied together and now I'm going to do something with them for 5 minutes. And hopefully it doesn't suck. Cause like hopefully you enjoy it. And in fact, we had the show I made during the pandemic, the show Reflex, where Captain Frodo directed the show. We literally had the kind of brief of that show being, we want to do the 3 sticks juggling where I don't mean that people need to like the 3 sticks at all, but I wanted people not to think like, wait, what is he doing? I wanted them to think like, oh, he's juggling in a different way now.
Yeah.
So we made this whole show where it was like the first half hour was like a TED talk and we wrote a script and talked about juggling. And then after 30 minutes, I do the 3 sticks. And it worked. I mean, everybody was kind of like, oh, yeah, he's juggling. And I don't think everybody was like, this is the best juggling I've ever seen, or I really like this, or whatever. But I don't think anybody was confused as to what I was doing. So to give a context for my passion for the work and my thinking about what I'm doing with it, and to share kind of a behind the scenes, origin story of the thing, and then to show the thing. That's kind of my what I'm working on right now, like with my shows that I create. It's like the TED Talk thing. You're giving a context for what you're doing.
It's funny that I'm starting to do exactly the same thing. Again, go back to me too. I'm not. I'm just trying to create rapport. No, I am.
But it's like I think we're of the similar, like we're of a similar generation, like me and you for sure. And we're at a similar point in our lives, and we are at that point in our lives where we're like reflecting back and like thinking about where things came from and where we're going, and like wanting to be, have a like not taking for granted the relationship with the audience and all these things. I'm totally with you that you would be not just me too, but like you're actually on the same journey, right? Like we're the same generation. Yeah. I feel it.
It becomes important, and it was really interesting that we all remember the Michael Motion contact juggling VHS, right, where he's sitting there in his pants, trousers, not underwear, kind of, not just in his pants like most of us would be if we're going with the American pants, but he's doing a thing, and we all just watched it, right? It was just amazing. And then when I got back into it again, kind of lockdown time, I searched Michael Motion. I was going, what's he doing now? Because I'm new to the world again. And I saw a clip of a show of him doing a show, and I thought, it's going to be really, lovely music and him. And it was him just sitting doing that, right? He's going, and then he talks about the contact juggling. And part of me was going, I love that. And part of me was going, no, you don't do that. You put lovely music on and shut up and and be an enigma. But I loved that he wasn't that, really. I was like, it made me feel less alone because that's kind of where I was going. But the fact that he's sort of having a bit of a laugh with the audience and putting them on and talking about it. And I suppose, yes, a 5-minute routine on VHS, right, is a different thing. But to hold an audience for an hour, and this is what, again, with the 8 rings, the contact juggling 8 rings, most lay people, most lay people that see that have never seen it. So they're going through that same thought process of, they kind of think I've invented it, which I'm quite hastily, don't want them to think. But I kind of like the fact that they go, what's this? And then when you spin them, it's for it. But when you start isolating them, you see, it's like a magic trick. People go, you get an audible gasp from the audience. And the same with the sticks. It's like it's not an isolation, but there's something you do with them that you're in one place and you're kind of doing that, and it's like they're a carousel.
You know who invented the 8? You know who invented the 8 rings, Steve?
Who? No.
Yeah, I'll send you a little article. I wrote a history of them a couple years ago because some people were talking about it on Facebook. So I wrote a little article about the history of them. But yeah, I made that when I was like 11 or 12 years old or something. I'll have to look at the text. But it really blows my mind that spread around the world somehow. Like it freaks me out when I see them and see people. It's just incredible. Like I am blown away. I don't take any credit for it because I did not intend any of it to happen like that. So I can't be like, oh yeah, I made this thing that had this vision. But yeah, I was like 12 years old or something and taped 2 rings together in my garage in my parents' house and was playing with them and whatever. But I'll send you the little history. It's kind of a silly little story.
Love you too. It's such a funny. That's nuts. And yes, it's taken off, and I can see exactly why. It's one of the few things. It's like when you can do a 4-ball stack with contact juggling with acrylics, right? You do one and do that, and people love it, right? There's something about isolation and that captures me as well. Even though I've seen hundreds, if I see it being done well, it's beautiful.
Totally.
And so that thing, the fact that you've got isolation and movement around it is nuts. But I'm surprised at how few people do it still, and I think a part of it is because it's a little bit more difficult than it seems. You kind of, I couldn't even, especially for those of us with porky fingers like me. It was 8 months, 9 months before any fluidity came, and that's unusual.
It was always it was always like my friend would always say, it's like tap dancing. It's easy to do badly. It's like tap dancing.
Yeah.
Tap dancing is easy to do badly. And I was like, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. and on other props as well, you know, you talk about, this is the real question I ask myself so much, because with magic, there is so much theory that says they have to recognize the props that you're using. It has to be recognizable, and so much. And apologies for those listening. I have talked about this before. I'll just show you a prop. Sorry, if you're not on the video, I'm going to show Jay the cone.
All right, I'm going to narrate. Steve is walking back into his library at the bookshelves. So many things that are happening you can't even imagine right now. And my narration is really proving that I had a lot of money well spent on my improvisation classes.
Oh, good.
It's a small leather case opening up with a small leather cone and some billiard balls.
Here we go.
An 8-ball and a red ball, probably number 3. That's usually how I keep my billiard balls, with the 3 on the red one. And also an acrylic ball. And now he's back. So we can end this improv.
So that was Stuart. Don't cut that. So let's say that's the. Let me get into the camera. So people listening to this will know the main move of the cone and ball, right? And it's a vanish, and it's shockingly difficult. So when I was working on this,
damn, looks great. That looks so good, Steve. That looks so freaking good.
Well, this is what I want to get right. So when I do that, I think that's a beautiful thing, and this is what I want to get to. Like the main difference and the big turmoil of adding magic. So when I stopped juggling and got into magic, and I started following those external rules that I'd said you shouldn't do this, you know. So I started working on this a good 20 years ago. I take my fingers together because I just couldn't. I was flashing all over the place like I did then, you know. You can just sort of see. And then I sent a video to a few people about 10 years later. You know, I got back into it and said, you know, what do you think? Do you think this has got legs? And some people said, the magicians said, yeah, but what is it? You know, nobody knows what the ball. It's got. You've got. Maybe it could be an ice cream cone. And I was like,
I see.
You know, maybe it could have an ice cream. I'd take the ice cream out and do. And part of me was like, oh, and I stopped it. I gave up doing it because I lost faith in it. Because so many people said, yeah, but it needs to have a meaning. It needs to have this. And then I went back to it and I did a routine on stage, which it became a juggling routine, right? And I'm not saying this just to go, I did this. Oh, no, great. But as the point being. So I thought, what if I come out and I start a juggling routine with this? So it's not a magic trick. Great that the audience would never have seen this trick probably anyway, because nobody does it hardly anymore. But they think, oh, he's doing a juggling routine. And then I do this thing where, and for those people watching, I'm putting the cone on the ball in my left hand. I throw both in the air, the cone spins, and I catch the ball in it. All right? But I do that and I fail. And it becomes a challenge. It becomes the arc of, right, now we've got, he can't do it, so he's going to try and do it. I try it a second time, it spins, and catches it. Big round of applause. Third time, it spins twice. I catch it. Then I try 3 spins. I drop it, and then I catch it, do it again. Then try 4 spins, and the ball's vanished. All right? And then it goes into it keeps vanishing, keeps coming back. Interestingly, the juggling routine at the beginning, even though it's not good juggling, it's pretty simple stuff on 2-ball juggling and a catch. A little bit like a simple version of you're doing with a cup club, the ball and the club. Where Jay's got clubs that you can Google it as well. If you look on Jay's YouTube, there's loads on it where the top of the juggling club has a concave bit so it can catch a ball in it. So that opens up things. And I found that as I was doing it, I didn't feel that the audience were thinking, why has he got a cone? You know, when you saw that ball vanish, was your first thought, why a cone? I mean, there might be a bit of that, but does that heighten it, or does it? So do I then? And this is a kind of question I've decided on, but the process is: do I just forget all that and go with what you're doing with the sticks, right? And I hadn't seen the sticks then. I'm doing this thing. I'm playing. No, it's kind of beating me, and it becomes about the relationship between me and the prop, not about. I've picked up a thing that you know what it is, and I'm going to do something unexpected, which I think has great merit. And do you, so when you see that, what are your initial? I don't mean what are your initial thoughts, as in, do you think it's all right? But in the other way.
No. You're bringing up you're bringing up two big points here, and one of the points was something I've been wanting to get to talk to you about this whole conversation. Like in the back of my mind, I had this a small agenda. I was like, maybe we'll talk about this thing, which is kind of my major thing right now. Which I'm gonna save that one for the second thing to talk about. So the first thing though is I think my take on it is this. What you're touching on is this. So many times when I go see, let's just stick with juggling because I can talk about juggling with some sort of authority, just from personal experience, and say that like 99% of the routines or acts or shows I go see where people are juggling, I'm always like, why are you juggling? Like as a starting point. And once they're into the juggling, then I'm totally by it. But it's getting into the juggling. Like, why do you start juggling? Like you come on stage and you're doing your act in Palazzo or wherever you're at on the cruise ship or whatever. And you just start juggling. And I'm like, but why did you start juggling? It's so weird. Like juggling is so weird just to start doing it. And I think it's the hardest thing is this idea of like, how do we start and why do we start? So one thing I found, which is related to what you're talking about now with the cone and the ball, is that if I do a juggling routine, or I see a juggling routine, and it's about juggling in music, for example, then I don't think about why they're juggling. I kind of gloss over that step because we take that for granted because we're focused on another, layer that's going on. So it's like if somebody comes out with a ball and it makes a certain tone, like a note, and they have another ball that makes a different note, and they start juggling them, I don't go like, why are you juggling? I go, what song are you playing? Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a little bit of a distraction or something. So with your cone there, when you're doing the flip, for me, that flip is the same function as the musical component of my example before, where it's like you turn the single flip, double flip, triple flip. That's the narrative. So no, I don't care about the cone being like, wait a second, what does the cone mean? Because if you present me with a game, you go, I'm going to flip this thing one time. Oh, actually, you know what? It's pretty hard to do. Okay, I try it again. Now I nailed it. Because now I'm into some sort of other narrative, right? Like I'm not just stuck with being like, why does he have a cone? I go, well, he has a cone because he's trying to do two flips. And it's a little bit of a trick of the mind. I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot, this idea of like, how do we start? And maybe having different layers associated with the technique that the audience can grasp onto so we can kind of, in one way, I feel like cheating, like you're skipping over the moment of like, what is the cone? It's like, well, it doesn't matter what the cone is. I'm trying to do two flips. Didn't you see? Now I'm trying to do three flips. And you just get into that drama of like that, that drama of like that narrative. So then I'm not really worried what the cone is. Potentially. It's a theory I had. It's something I noticed recently where when I'm teaching in the circus school or something, maybe another example, I don't know if it's good, but I can try, is I had a student who was thinking about juggling like their body was made of a rubber band. So something, I didn't get it either. I mean, I don't care that I get that he was juggling like a rubber band, but it was more that it inspired him to do some really cool juggling. So I was like, oh yeah, be a rubber band. That's fine. But he was kind of bending and stretching his body, like stretching and releasing his arms and snapping the balls quickly. And there's some rubber band imagery. But the cool thing I thought he did was before he presented that act to the school is he passed out rubber bands to everybody in the audience, like before he started. And it's like, what does a human do who's sitting on the floor, waiting for something to start? You like play with the rubber band. So like, I don't know, people had some sort of sensation of rubber bands in their body before they were watching him. And then he started doing, and then they could already start being like, oh, he's kind of maybe being like a rubber band. He's kind of stretching back and then releasing it. And I thought that was kind of a clever way to start. So it's like, we're not wondering why he's juggling because we're in the rubber band story. Does that make any sense? Yeah. So that was my first thought about the cone, basically.
The first thing that sprung to mind is that when I kind of went against that thing, I was like, no, I'm just going to present it. Actually, when I did, there was a more internal reasoning that wasn't as explicit. And I think that we sometimes in the magic world, and I remember in the juggling world as well, we think that meaning or that reasoning has to be very obvious, right? So the obvious thing would be, what else is shaped like a cone in the world? Well, believe me, I've Googled it not much. So I even went down the routes of, is it a hat? Is it, all this stuff?
It's a tiny megaphone.
Yeah, or is there a little kind of figurine on a little gnome, and I take the hat off the gnome? All this thing, very explicit, very obvious, and isn't going to take that long to get there. Or is it more implicit, meaning, did I just find it and I'm thinking, what is it? And don't get me down the route of, because there's been a lot of that done badly. We when we were at Circus Space, everybody doing a Cord Lease act discovered the rope at the beginning. So there's that. And not, again, we've all been there. I'm not criticising. So someone else is just about to discover a rope that drops down and go, what's this? What can I do with that? But totally. Actually, that kind of play is even if you went more explicit and went, oh, are you looking for a box? And go, what's it? Oh, I can throw it, But even that gives it something. And I suppose what I'm saying is there is meaning that people can be a bit more ambiguous, all right? They're asking themselves, is this something he's done before? Which I think is more difficult then when you're a juggler to just start doing a routine. It's obviously clipped and really tight, but we don't know what the thing is. So I think maybe some meaning that is more subtle, or again easier to do if you're not a kind of in a suit doing a thing. So I think with juggling, you get that a lot more. My initial thing I was going to say, and don't forget the second thing you were going to say, is in juggling it seems to people worry about it a bit less. They kind of go, I'm doing a cool thing.
But it goes back to that cultural relationship, probably, like maybe in a little bit, right? Like people can forgive jugglers for having more abstract objects than magicians, potentially. I don't know, as a starting point.
Yeah, or is it because magic has that inbuilt thing where it's on TV more, people know about it more. There's not many juggling specials on Netflix, right? So totally. They've got a vocabulary. They know there's an inbuilt thing of, in a minute something's going to surprise us. How is it going to surprise, or is it not? So there's a release at the end. So that's the irony of it, I suppose, is that we have to work a lot less hard on that, and to actually take juggling into the mainstream, I would argue you have to work harder. Right? You have to find a creative way to present it. So if you're doing a Cirque du Soleil piece, it has to be part of a character or something. It can't just be the focus on the close-up.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, the funny thing is, when you showed me the cone and the ball, the juggler in me didn't even think twice about the cone. It's so funny you brought that up later. Like, yeah, but what is the cone? And I'm just like, yeah, it's a cone. Like, that's okay, because I'm a juggler. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, but that's what I wanted to. That was my second point I wanted to say, which was, so I was working in Las Vegas for the past 5 winters before COVID. So I would go work in the show Absinthe, doing a replacement for one of the jugglers in a juggling act there. And when I was in Vegas every winter, there's a lot of magic shows there. So I started watching a lot of magic shows just on the strip or whatever. And I performed at Wonderground a few times. So like I got to know Jeff McBride. And of course I knew magicians before I went to Vegas, and I knew about Jeff McBride's work my whole life, but I got to meet these people and get to know them. And so I kind of got really interested in the culture of magic, and I started to study magic, not in the way that like I'm going to do magic techniques or methods or effects, but just in the way that like I find magic culture really weird as a juggler, but not bad, but just really weird. And I still to this day don't understand half of it, even after studying it for like 8 years now. I can give you one example of like how I've been thinking about magic culture and juggling culture and like how they relate. And then I'll get to the bigger question from your cone. But one small example can be, in magic, you have the method and the effect. And what's so cool about that for me as a juggler is that the effect is normally like vocalized or articulated. The coin vanished. That's the effect. Whereas in juggling, we don't really ever vocalize the effect. So like I can juggle 5 rings for you. And again, if I just take it on the surface level of like, I didn't drop them. Okay, I guess that's the effect, but that's not really the effect. If I present it in maybe a more nuanced context of like, how does it make you feel? Or what shapes do you see? Or what patterns do you see? I mean, jugglers are doing different patterns all the time. So what is the effect that has on an audience? I think that's so cool that magicians normally vocalize very clearly what's the effect. And you have to, because you want to reverse engineer the method then. And so I started thinking like, in magic, you can have the same effect, but totally different methods. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So like, what if we took some juggling and we had the same juggling, but different methods? Like, what would that mean? So I started to divide juggling into methods and effects. Oh, and that was like a fun game to play. Like, I'll give a really dumb example, which in the moment doesn't have much utility, but like, it's a very concrete example. So it's easy to give, which is I had a student in the circus school and we made some juggling where the audience closed their eyes and you just hear the juggling. So, if you juggle 3 clubs, you hear them hitting your hands. So he had made this particular pattern of juggling that sounded the same the whole time. But when you open your eyes, he was actually doing 5 different patterns that just sounded the same. And I thought that was really like a fun little experiment in the moment. Like obviously not as a utility necessarily for a performance, but like as a technical exercise of like, can we have effects and methods in juggling? So that's like one little connection that I got out of this, like studying magic. And now get to the point of the cone, which is one thing I find really attractive about magic, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that magicians tend to want to build an emotional relationship with the object and the audience. Whereas the juggler, they're just like, oh, this is some plastic club that looks like a toy that I bought on some website that I'm going to do a bunch of tricks with. And the audience is just like, okay, we take that for granted. It's a juggling club, looks like a bowling pin or something. And now you're going to do a bunch of stuff with it. Whereas like the cliche example with a magician is like, this is a coin, but it was my grandfather's coin.
Sure.
And it was my grandfather who's dead who taught me how to do magic and pulled it out from behind my ear when I was 5 years old. And that's why I'm a magician on this Vegas stage today. It's like they tell you that it's their grandfather's coin because they want to make an emotional connection with the object so that it has value, so that when it vanishes, there's some sort of like you care or you notice maybe more that it vanished. Like, because otherwise you just be like, okay, I don't care about that coin, so I'm not going to look at it or something. Whereas in juggling, we don't normally care emotionally about the objects in the same way as the magician does. And one way to make those objects have an emotional connection is that they are actual things. So it's like my grandfather's hat or my grandfather's eyeglasses or something, as opposed to like my grandfather's cone. Maybe it's a little bit more weird. Yeah. But jugglers all the time are just like, oh yeah, here's a weird piece of plastic that I'm going to throw around. Yeah. And so I love that idea. So recently I'm making a new show with Erik Oberg. We have a performance company here in Sweden. We do shows for schools, for kids in schools. And our new show is called Artifact. And so we're juggling dinosaur eggs. We're juggling meteorites. We're juggling, I don't know, ostrich eggs or fossils. We have like some fossil fish and some trilobites, and so, like the objects we have. This came from my magic thinking of like, I'm going to use an object that the audience cares about. And we've been using the dinosaur eggs for a couple years as like a little. We do a question and answer at the end of our school show, and sometimes we brought the dinosaur eggs with us, and just to tell the kids like, this egg is, 250 million years old. It's a Triceratops egg. Already the kids are just like, oh my God. Yeah. And it's that emotional connection. And of course they like dinosaurs at that age. And then you juggle them. And it's almost like the juggling is gratuitous, right? Like you could almost just show the egg, but then that you do juggle it makes them go, oh, they're juggling dinosaur eggs. And that's just a very like initial step into this emotional object world for juggling.
Yeah.
And so hopefully the new show we make is going to be a bit more like crafted and less gratuitous, but like the idea would be that to be like a magician and to emotionally connect the objects to the audience. So I guess that's the question is like, do you recognize any of that as a thing? Or is this just like my own juggler brain looking at the magic world? And then second of all, do you think that then the utility is that you have an object that is like a baseball or a hat as opposed to like a cone? Do you think that helps the emotional connection, or I don't know? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think that what you're saying is correct in the way that the magician tries to create an emotional connection between the object and the audience. There's a lot of magic theory that says that is very important, or you connect some part of you to the audience or with a story. Now, the story about the this was my granddad's coin is a kind of cliche way of doing it. However, I've seen that done, even though I've seen it done hundreds upon hundreds of times, and I've seen it done with skill and sincerity that even though I know it's horse shit, and I don't mean that as in the quality, the story is made up, I connect to it and still engage with it because it's done in a sincere way. So it's like the snowstorm in China thing, right? You know, the snowstorm thing when
Yeah.
You know, and the classic thing is, you know, someone who had never seen snow. So, you know, that story said usually more eloquently again than that. I've seen it, even though I've heard that script many times, and because it's not my forte, magicians will know exactly who originated it. I don't know, but I've seen Copperfield and people like that do it in ways that engage me. It becomes, the story is still relevant because so that's great. And there are other ways of doing it. Now, in the magic world, they say that should be the case. Not everybody says that. And I don't sometimes. But I think the thing is that a lot of people don't do it. And that is exactly the same as juggling. If you don't create and it doesn't have to be the club, it can be the thing, the activity, the something, or part of the show, or the theme of the show, or the stuff you're saying in between. The connection there needs to be a connection between what you're doing and the audience. For me, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the object. So the object, I tend to think sometimes when they don't know what the object is, that creates interest, right? It's like, oh, what's he going to do? So I think that can maybe be enough, especially if you're there going, oh, what can I do with that? Oh, look, it spins. So there's the unexpected thing, the vanish, because you condition them into thinking it's all about the skill and the catching, and there's a moment of surprise, which is, of course, what we want.
I mean, for me, with that combination of objects you have, where it's like you have the cone, this leather cone, and then you have the crystal ball. For me, both of those things are abstract, and we're in the same world. Whereas if you have the cone and the billiard ball, yeah, I mean, of course, we can argue it either way, but like for me, that's a little bit less accessible because like the billiard ball is a thing which kind of points even more to what is the cone.
Yes.
The point of me bringing that up is just that like I find that when I'm with an audience, I just want to be more consistent with on whatever level I'm working on, right? So either we're in an abstract world and then they can relate to me and not be taken out of the moment, or then we're in a realistic world that this is a dinosaur egg and this is a real egg or chicken egg or whatever. And people go, oh, those are real things. And this is the level that we're relating on. For me, the confusion comes when I try to jump levels or I don't communicate clearly. Now we're going from abstract to concrete or vice versa or something.
Yeah.
Like
so, and that's really another argument that some people have had is that when you do the cups and balls, the final loads, so you do the cups and balls, you've got little baseballs, the final load when I do it is oranges, right? Now, there are some people that say the final load needs to be a big version of the small load. And logically it kind of works. However, the fact that it's completely separated from whatever's been happening creates that gut punch for me. Is like, whoa, I wasn't expecting an orange because that's a real thing. And this has been, even though they're real things, with the cone and ball, interestingly that you should say that the 8-ball is the final. So you've done this thing and that comes back, etc. You know, you put it in your pocket, it's gone again. They expect it to come back and it's an 8-ball. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
Then, because it's the other way around, it's like, hang on, I know what that is, and it wasn't expected because we were looking at these abstract objects, and then it goes and you go back to what you were doing. So it's that little kind of hiccup. It's almost like you're coming out of the Matrix for a second, going back in. It's not like that. That's big grand, but so
no, that's awesome. You're killing me. What you just said right there kills me, dude. Because like magicians are so cool, like in terms of that stuff, that you even have those thoughts of like, yeah, okay, we're doing cups and balls, and every time it's this red sponge ball or it's a little steel ball, and then I should produce the huge steel ball. But no, it should instead just be an orange. It's not even in the world of a steel ball, so it slaps you even harder. It's a fruit. That's so freaking cool, dude. You make me want to juggle like that. Like, why don't jugglers have these narratives about their objects where it's like, okay, I juggle the 3 clubs, I juggle the 4 clubs, I juggle 5 clubs, I juggle 6 clubs, and then I juggle 7 fish or something like,
yeah, well,
7 sticks or 7 canes or 7, you know what I mean? Like boomerangs. I don't know. It would be emotionally fun to try to translate those ideas into juggling a bit more, what's the word? On purpose. Like,
yeah. Well,
like to do it.
I think you see it, right? You see a version of it, which is why it always gets a strong response. And you do it, right? You do it again, looking like I've only done my 11 minutes of research.
No, it's great. But it's good to have common reference. It's perfect.
But you drop, and it's like I've dropped. When you do the talk, you reach for a thing, and that becomes in the pattern. I suppose that's a similar thing, right? It's kind of like you don't play it in that obvious way, but it's you pick up the thing, you pick up the glass.
It is a similar thing, and I never thought of it until just now. And that is, again, and I'm not saying magic is all great and juggling sucks, or everything's good and bad, right? We have good and bad points of both magic and juggling. It is the same thing what you just said, but I never had the words to articulate it till just now. So jugglers don't use this kind of language. So when that happens in the past, that was intuitive. I mean, I knew I was going to do that because that's a bit that I do that I know works, like grabbing someone's shoe or taking the glass of water or whatever. But like in terms of the idea of what it's accomplishing in my relationship to the audience, I can never articulate it like you just did. And so that's maybe one thing, is that my work in that area as a juggler has been intuitive and not conscious. And I would love to consciously like formulate my language, maybe steal a little bit of the language from magic and put it into juggling. Like, yeah, again, that idea of like method and effect was really a fun game to try to bring into the juggling world. So yeah, I would love to be more intentional with the types of objects I choose for the emotional impact that it would have. I think that's a really good lesson to learn from magic. Among other things. And I'm sure magic can learn things from juggling and blah, blah, blah. But just as a little moment there, that's really is cool that you put some language to that moment that I can use for the future to and enhance that effect even more, like the emotional impact there.
Yeah. And I would say, I was just about to say the same thing, as it sometimes sounds like I'm putting magic down and saying juggling is great, but I think that's the purpose of this, is that comparison, this moment for me is, in the other way, those conversations we have as magicians are really cool. Quite a lot of the time, they will not be conversations, they'll be arguments because they're based on dogma, right? So, no, it's better. Yeah. It's better that you do that, because in 1948, they said in this book that you should never, there's that, right? Whereas juggling, I think, tends to be a little bit more, hey, what could we do with this? And sharing and going, well, maybe that doesn't work, it doesn't work. And there seems to be a bit more exploration, maybe because the limitations of the props. There's no limitations in magic.
Well, potentially. I mean, first of all, there you go. The dogma, that's, as a juggler looking into the world of magic, it's the dogma that I don't understand. Mostly probably because I don't have the background of the history of, like, I didn't read the book from 1948, like, to know what the dogma was. And so like a lot of the magic like culture for me, it's very opaque. Like I understand on the surface like the way people behave, but I don't understand the reasons why those rules, like unwritten rules, exist. So that's always been like a fun, also frustrating challenge sometimes to look into the magic world and be like, what the hell is going on? But in terms of juggling, I can see two things there. Number one, maybe you're right. Maybe things are a bit more loose in terms of like we can experiment a little bit more or play around a little bit more without having the weight of history on our back. Because for sure, Magic is way more developed than juggling in terms of the depth of it and the history of it. Just in terms of the number of practitioners, it's just like an order of magnitude or 3 bigger than juggling. So we have that to deal with. But also with juggling, we don't have a history of publishing books about juggling. And that's one thing I love about Magic is like, it's totally a normal thing to know where tricks come from, to know, oh, I'm doing the Di Vernon version of the, Cardini double lift or whatever it is. That you have that in your culture. In juggling, we don't really, oh, you're doing the Anthony Gatto version of the Ignatov back cross. Like it doesn't happen, right? And so we don't have that dogma in juggling, which is a blessing and a curse. Maybe it allows us to be more free, to not have to worry about what's right and what's wrong. At the same time, we often have to reinvent the wheel constantly because we lose knowledge like so rapidly. The turnover of the generations of jugglers is so quick. And so I kind of miss that we don't document our work better and have more dogma. But like then in Magic, we could maybe see that the weight of having all that history on your back constantly is also not a good thing. I don't know. Yeah,
and I'm aware of your time, Jay. So, I don't want to hold you too long. But
we should. This has been such a great gift today, Steve. Like we should do this again sometime. This has been a great talk. I should probably we should wrap it up pretty soon. But thank you so much for letting me come here and riff on some weird ideas.
Well, I'm one of the people. I know that a lot of podcasts say you got to come back sometime. And if you look at my podcast, I actually mean it. There's a few recently that I'd rather talk to people again that I enjoy talking to than lots of different people that I don't. So
and it would be really fun to check in with you. Like, I mean, obviously privately too, but like about the progress of how your show goes. And I'm making a couple new shows. It'd be really fun to keep a dialogue going, long distance here and there when we can about how the process goes. For sure.
Yeah. I'd love to. Well, let's do that privately, and let's do the next podcast. And I want to start the next question on the next podcast with, I wrote the question about why aren't there more fucking juggling books, that aren't just pictures from 1972 until 1990. And that we don't have to do that now, but that's the to be continued one, because there is such a rich, there's so much to be done there, I think.
I agree. Yeah, man. I'm with you.
Mate, I'm going to...
Well, thanks for today. That was super fun.
Quick cut off, but that's only because of your time, and I want you to go because I've just realised we've been going for a long time, which is
it's good. It's really good. No, it's great. It's perfect timing, actually. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for today.
Yeah, man. I've loved every second of it. Go and be with your family. Message me whenever, and we'll chat anyway. And thank you so much, Jay. You've completely inspired me, and I've got a massive smile on my face, man. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Likewise. Yeah, thanks for all the thoughts today. That was awesome, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. See you, mate.
All right, see you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that was Jay. Again, let me know what you think. Comment, review, share, all those things. With one person does it, I cannot tell you the difference it makes. So I'd love to get enough. I mean, the numbers are good, don't get me wrong. I'm very happy with them. But it'd be nice to get a sponsorship on this and be able to do them more often. So any suggestions, anybody you'd like to see on this podcast, steve@stevefaulkner.com or steve@onlinemagic.co. They all go to the same place. Check out onlinemagic.co, the membership site. Check out all of Jay Gilligan's work. If you ever wanted to learn to juggle or you used to juggle, pick it up again. It has completely transformed my life and made me a lot happier, I think, having that. Platinum magic is wonderful, but my magic is very kind of sitting down, and to put that movement into my life has just changed everything, and that creativity. So thanks very much. Have a great one. Take care. Follow me on Instagram @SteveFaulkner and do all that good stuff I've asked you to do. See you later. Bye-bye.